If the oil pressure in the engine falls, then we need to notify the driver immediately, because low oil pressure is a serious problem for an engine. There'll be very rapid wear and the engine can essentially be completely destroyed in a very short period of time if it continues to run without sufficient oil pressure. So every vehicle has an oil pressure warning light, and in some vehicles you have an oil pressure gauge. And the way that works is that somewhere in the oil system will be an oil pressure switch or a sending unit which sends a signal to the dashboard and illuminates the light or operates the gauge. On this engine, the oil pressure switch fits into here just above the main oil gallery, and that reads the oil pressure or detects the oil pressure on its way up to the cylinder head. This engine has an oil pressure switch, and there's a difference between a pressure switch and a sender unit. Well, essentially they're both sender units, but a switch simply switches on or off depending on the oil pressure. So this oil pressure switch is essentially binary. It's either on or it's off. The pressure is either too low or perfectly fine. The way this pressure switch works is that we have a current coming from the dashboard here, and if we imagine that the light for this pressure switch was right here and connected along here, we're sending 12 volts along here, and at the moment, because there's no oil pressure, this switch is turned on. So that 12 volts will go through the switch and into the engine, which is earthed in the car. So we have a complete circuit, the light bulb will be illuminated. As we turn on the engine, you'll notice that the pressure warning switch is illuminated for a few moments when you first start your engine. That's because the oil pressure hasn't built up. As the pressure builds up, it pushes on a plunger here, pushes that along, disconnects the switch, and the light turns off. And as long as there's oil pressure inside the engine, the oil pressure light will remain turned off. The moment the oil pressure falls, the plunger will come back along here, the switch is reconnected, and the light will come on to warn you of low oil pressure. If you're not sure if you're looking at a pressure switch or a pressure sensor, the giveaway is the number of connectors. A switch will tend to have just a single connector, whereas sensors will have multiple connectors. This is the console for the Miata, and you can see that we have an oil gauge in the middle here. But we already talked about how we only have an oil pressure switch on this engine. And what's happening here is that this is not really a gauge at all. The giveaway is it has no numbers on the indicators. And this gauge is simply indicating in the center when the pressure is normal, and it will fall to the bottom when the oil pressure switch turns on. A common modification for these cars is to swap the oil pressure switch for a sensor and swap this gauge for one which actually indicates the oil pressure in the engine.